Have you ever experienced academic burnout?
Yeah, so many things are racking up. Due dates are on the same day. You feel the discomfort of it all just pile on, and you kind of shut down.
I felt like my performance just was very high and then it dropped.
What's something you've always wanted to ask a neuroscientist?
What's an easy hack to improve my memory?
Hello, I'm Andrew Hales. Welcome to another podcast episode of Inside the Brain. This week we talk all about academic burnout. I went over to Vanderbilt and I asked the students if they've ever been burned out before, what it's like, and any questions they might have for neuroscientists. There's a lot of good stuff in this episode. We talk all about finite energy, ego depletion, willpower, cognitive discipline, of course, dopamine and the 6 molecules, with my resident neuroscientist co-host, Axel Bouchon. And thank you. I love you. Please like, subscribe, and yeah.
There's kind of this argument in psychology of whether will to do something, of like our will, of like a reservoir to control ourselves, like a reservoir of self-control is depletable, like naturally, or it's whether we think it's depletable, like it's in our heads.
Yeah.
Like some people, they can just keep on going all the time, right?
I've always wondered that too. So you're asking like if ego depletion is real, basically.
Yeah, right.
Every person's mental and physical energy is basically finite, right? When you are kind of just like exposed to massive amounts of data learning and consens learning, like you have to understand connections and logical things, it burns energy. What, to be very clear, is only, I would almost say, only one molecule, which is dopamine. So the whole burnout discussion is actually a dopamine discussion, because dopamine is the energy supply for mental energy.
Okay.
So if you just now turn it around, if your dopamine is empty because you have used it up, no emotional response, very limited. In particular, you actually have selected emotional responses that are the most rudimentary. The last thing that really works is actually getting aggressive. Sensitive to criticism, you're kind of just like, you're just not relaxed.
Irritable, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So without dopamine, serotonin cannot give you a feeling of recognition and pride, right? Without dopamine, you cannot experience gratitude of that you are at one of the highest universities or whatever. So in a way, you are systematically, without dopamine, eroding your emotional well-being. Burnout overlaps with a depression diagnosis, I think, by 70%. So it's just it is a very clear in its end stage depression disorder. They go through the same curriculum, right? They do the same studies. They ask the same questions. They learn the same material. Of course, it's ego depletion, right? I mean, you're feeling like one out of 100 to 120 people that are the same. So in this like herd mentality, willpower is just given up. I mean, if you have ever seen a herd of whatever, kind of just like wildebeest, right? It's almost like there's no single animal taking a decision here. It's like a herd mentality. So it is actually literally that in these situations, your willpower is reduced because around you is giving you a state dependency that you adapt to. Dopamine is not only responsible that you can really focus on something you have to study. Dopamine is also fundamentally important to make the memory that you remember what you studied. So if you have a boost of dopamine, in particular like with Adderall or Ritalin, you may feel good in studying quick. But if I ask you in 4 weeks, you will not remember it properly. And that makes, of course, a real challenge in kind of disciplines. It's just a medicine, right? Where your knowledge builds every semester on each other. So in a way, you win every exam, but over time, because you forget everything what you have done on the drugs, you're not building a natural knowledge base.
You're saying your memory doesn't work as well when you're using Adderall?
The point is the long-term memory. The short-term memory works extremely because you're very quickly grabbing stuff, but the long-term memory, that was also in the interviews, what needs sleep, in particular deep sleep, is impaired. Under Adderall, Ritalin, you can basically have not any deep sleep. That means the real coding of a memory is impaired. And if you're continuously on it, you are actually literally feeling, oh, I can learn so fast, But de facto, you are not forming a long-term memory because you are never sleeping deep enough, what is essential to form a memory.
What are some study hacks that you have?
I try to like write it down. I feel like that's the best way. Just like I feel like when you like type things sometimes or
You feel like
listening,
you feel like writing is
it like goes in one ear out the other. I feel like writing it down like really like gets to the memory, and I find it like going back there. And even like sometimes like my writing is not like my writing's a bit hard to read, so I feel like when I like go over it again, I can like get more of it again because I'm like actually thinking about what it means and like what I'm trying to say.
It's like an effort to read your handwriting.
Yeah, but that actually helps me, I think, at the end of the day.
Why is writing like better for like learning than typing something down? Do you know what's going on?
In a way, what we do with using a muscle, right? So typing is a different muscle and kind of just like what we have learned by writing it. I think it's more powerful. Drawing is even more powerful. So we connect a formula or a sentence or a term with a certain movement. So all of a sudden, our body has in the memory not only the term, or ideal is chemical structures, right? Not only the chemical structure, but how you move your hand. So and the point is, I think that is so powerful as a so-called additional information in your memory. And now you understand why typing doesn't really work so well, right? Because it's not like a rhythm or kind of anything what is drawing. It's like literally you're just typing and then something comes up. Like saying something like audio recording is less powerful. That's the clue. It's like an additional element to a memory that is remembered. It's funny. I mean,
So it's like all about like the movement with your hand. It just imprints your brain a little better.
Somehow it adds to, I can see biochemist. I mean, like, this is glucose, right? I can, if I'm 120 years old, I can still draw you glucose with no error. Because just like you have done it so often, 100,000 of times, because it had a logic in itself. It had a beauty kind of, I always do it in a certain format. So I believe it's more the movement of my hand than what I remember in my brain.
What's going in the brain when you're going through burnout?
I'm not totally sure.
How do the brains look of these people, right? Like chronic burned out people. They have significant reduction of so-called cortical thickness in the prefrontal cortex. That's where actually all your intelligence sits, right? So despite they have studied like crazy, they have actually degraded the areas that are responsible for learning and intelligence, right? Or kind of cognitive intelligence. Because they were so stressed. The cortisol literally erodes these areas. So now you can imagine in the combination. So I have less and less energy. I feel more and more stressed. I get less and less cognitively learned. I feel more stupid as we go because I have the molecules. I don't have the molecules to even learn.
The problem comes in those times of burnout where there's just not enough hours in the day. And so staying up until 4 a.m. isn't even something that you're intentionally doing. It just happens, and in those moments, I kind of regret doing that just because I know the next day I'm not going to be as productive. But then you do it again, and then you do it again, right? But recently,
like on 4 hours of sleep, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've been trying to realize that my productivity the next day will be better if I get more sleep, and I've realized that to be true. So recently, even if it's not 8 hours, I will still try to get 6 on a good day, or 7 if I'm really lucky.
So you purposely sacrifice the studying time for sleep?
Recently, I've been trying to, and so I would love to learn why neurologically extra sleep does improve my productivity on a day-to-day basis if I implement it over sacrificing my studying time.
It is actually not the duration of sleep. It is the question on how is your deep sleep phase that determines how well you are basically just recording longer memories.
It's possible to get 8 hours without getting the good sleep?
Oh, yes. Look at me. I do this every day almost. I really have really difficulties to have deep sleep phases. I'm happy if I get 30 or 35 minutes. It's what is really too short. if you let's make up this scenario, right? You're under stress for an exam tomorrow, right? You haven't really prepared. So ideal is to learn as much as you can, but hopefully you are a good deep sleeper. And then you can actually really, it makes sense to hammer something in and then go to sleep for at least 5-6 hours. Right? I think that's always a good idea. 4 hours seems to be very short. But here comes the point. Cortisol, stress, remember, blocks deep sleep. So when you have too much cortisol, when you go to sleep, you're not getting into the phase that is actually recording the long-term memories. So you see, everything ties down to the question, how stressed do you feel at university? What now becomes almost a philosophical question, right? Because the concept of universities is, of course, interesting, right? It's a brutal selection. So you're surrounded by people that are equal, if not smarter than you, right? And now Axel, the neuroscientist, tells you, hey, relax, you should not be stressed, because otherwise you cannot learn. But that's the entire thing. So in a way, what the universities in the US do somehow brilliantly, I put this in inverted commas, is selecting the ones most resilient to stress. Pretty much what happens in your work life later.
Right. Yeah, it goes to show, like, procrastinating and like adding all that stress, at the very end, and then the students that are diligent and work on the paper for the full time that they have, and not stressing, it's an upward spiral,
But now you can also see the huge challenge we face with AI, right? So you have all of a sudden a chance to not learn all this. You can just click and get like the whole results. But that's important to understand. You do not learn anything. Your brain is zero trained if you do the shortcut via the LLMs.
Given the choice, though, between only getting 4 hours or studying 4 hours less, you can't sleep any more than 4 hours, you would choose the sleep?
That's a good question. In a way, I never choose to sleep. So I always did it wrong. But in hindsight, if I would have known all this, I would have tried to really make sure that that my deep sleep phases are okay.
How can people keep their cortisols low so they can study more effectively?
The two major killers of cortisol is good sleep and physical activity, right? These are everybody knows these two. The third one is actually positive emotions in any shape or form. Because the positive neurotransmitters on our that are creating our positive emotions are active blockers of cortisol. So hanging out with your friends indeed makes you a better student because you can be more productive learning. It's actually a mental state that you have to develop as a student that is, hey, I may not know everything. Number one. Number two, there's always someone better than me. There's no chance that I'm the best one of everyone.
Now we're just talking about social skills.
Actually, I talk still in the old school term in terms of cognitive skills. Because that's an interesting thing, right? In my time, I was very clear I would not be able intellectually to study theoretical physics. I'm just not smart enough.
You mentioned that you've been academically burnt out twice. What does that mean?
In 3.5 years, I cannot remember to have one vacation. I cannot remember. I had periods where I didn't even have an apartment. I was living and sleeping in the lab. And then, because it's better, right? Because if you have a midnight data point to take from a experiment, why shall I drive home, right? If you combine that with my situation that I had 1.5 years, not a single result I could show because everything failed, you have a pressure that you cannot imagine. You are working nonstop and you have nothing to show. And if I don't deliver something in the next couple of months, I cannot finish my PhD. What means I will have no job effectively, right? I can have lower jobs, but the idea why I did all my university time for 5-6 years are basically meaningless. So this combination is such a massive sink for dopamine that for me, burnout is basically just you burned all your dopamine. It feels like I have spent 10 years really over books, hammering knowledge into my brain. I really was using the perfectionist approach. Right? Like I wanted to know everything. But at huge cost. I think I did not attend a single party at university. It's like actually very sad story. Huh? And then
you feel like your social life suffered.
It didn't exist. So I definitely there was not much. In that moment, I remember sitting on that desk. I would say a whole night, like several hours. I could not move, and then at the time we had a second postdoc in the lab who was just checking for some stuff, and he came in and said, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm just not well. So he did something really amazing. He kind of just like said, "Hey, come on, let's go eat something," and we literally went for burgers. Huh? And in a way that made a few things. One, and in hindsight, it was amazing, right? Because eating the classical fast food is a dopamine push. So even though I was pretty empty, I could at least get some energy back. And so it was actually a brilliant move, even though he was just trying to kind of help me, in a way, getting better. So I recovered for like 1-2 days, but I realized I have very, very big difficulties to even set up an experiment. Kind of getting into the lab took me like 3 times the time. And so I degraded over the week further that I was sitting hours on the table, literally like also in physical exhaustion. And then it became clear, hey, he has to see a doctor. The doctor called the institute and said, hey, this guy just needs to take a break. And it was in the middle of summer and I kind of just was sunny. So in a way, I was naturally kind of grabbing me back together. And I thought I'm back okay. And I went back and after 1 day it was the same thing. So I was back down at the same thing. So there was the situation of this state dependency, the stress in the lab within a day could revert my situation. And then basically everybody said, okay, look, you take a break for 4 weeks and then we see. And that was the best thing to do because what I did, another friend invited me to kind of just like run a marathon, what I never did before. But the training, everything was kind of interesting in hindsight, was a dopamine recovery. The food, the kind of everything what I was eating was changing. So therefore my dopamine levels naturally were kind of increasing. So in a way, after these 4 weeks, I came back and I remember going into the lab and was afraid that I feel the same, but I really was back. So it felt like I was refilled to a certain level.
And you didn't work at all those 4 weeks of recovering.
Exactly. So it was interesting. So if I compare it to other people reporting severe burnout, they cannot do sports. It would stress them even more. So for me, that was helpful because I was not doing anything in sports at the time. What was not degrading my stress levels. Sports degrades the cortisol. So I had like in a situation where I had very low dopamine, I must have had very high cortisol levels. I was not sleeping, so cortisol is not degraded. I was not moving, cortisol is not degraded. And then you basically just shut down.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Please comment what you think about all this if you're in school. We're also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, in case you didn't know. And I love you. Thank you.